joining us today. Sorry, we're running a couple of minutes late. First of all, just to introduce ourselves, my name is Mollison. I'm the sales director at Workwell Outsourcing. My background, previously, I used to work for various different umbrella companies within the industry, and then I moved to outsourcing more recently, and I'm joined today with Benson, who's our sales manager.
Yeah, hello everybody. I work for Workwell Outsourcing, and I've been in the recruitment industry, specifically funding payroll and back office for nearly 9 years now, working with agencies from new startup to established, focusing on the most compliant and efficient back office solutions for their businesses, to support with growth and expansion across regions and different countries, and generally just supporting them with everything that happens after placement, a contract or a permanent placement.
Yeah, so we're here to talk to you today about recruitment companies and their back office. That is keeping the back office in-house, outsourcing the back office. We're going to look at some pros and cons, and we're going to look at 3 case studies. And then if we have time at the end, we are going to do a Q&A. That said, just to warn everyone, we have rehearsed this a couple of times, and the runtime has been about 25 to 30 minutes. So we're not sure we're going to quite be able to keep it in the 20-minute mark as we originally thought. So if anyone does need to jump off, we will be sharing the full recording of this following the webinar. So should we jump straight into it then, Dan?
Yeah, 100%.
So first of all, can you give us a bit of background around what recruitment agency back office is? Because I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding, especially when it comes to outsource and insource. So in your opinion, what do you see recruitment back office as?
Yeah, so back office for me is everything that happens after a contractor or a permanent placement has been made, which allows the recruitment agencies to function compliantly and efficiently. That can be a mixture of things, and I speak to agencies on a daily basis, and they all have a different understanding of back office. So it's hard to contain it in one sentence or one paragraph as such, but ultimately for me it's everything that happens after that placement of a contractor or a permanent member of staff. Yeah,
so pretty much anything that happens in the background to keep an agency running, aside from the actual recruitment.
Yeah, anything from the onboarding and compliance of a candidate right through to monthly management accounts, year-end accounts, whatever that might be, that's what back office is to recruitment agencies specifically.
Yeah, okay. And what would you say are the pros of back office being in-house or recruitment agencies back office being outsourced? Let's start with outsourced.
So number one would be scalability for me. You don't have the difficulties of employing internal members of staff when you outsource your back office, and that can be a benefit for a number of reasons. Obviously, the cost of employing, which is something I'm going to move on to shortly as a section on its own. But the cost, the holidays that members of internal staff take, sickness, everything that comes into it, everyone goes to work every day. And sometimes we run into difficulties doing our job that factors we can't control. With outsourcing, you don't necessarily have to struggle with any of that, because it's a far more reliable solution to your back office. And that's certainly something that we see as one of our unique sort of points of contact.
Yeah, okay.
The next one, as I said, would be cost effectiveness. So everyone knows that generally outsourcing a solution is much cheaper than, like I've said, taking on internal staff, because it's not just the cost of the salary of that internal staff member and the overheads that come with that, but the cost of the systems that you've got to put in place to allow that member of staff to function the payroll and back office solution, the training that you've got to put them through, and general costs that you probably don't think of straight away when you look at employing a member of staff that very quickly add up.
Yeah, like you say, I think when people think about scaling up a recruitment agency, the main kind of overhead I think that people think about is actually the staff cost. But like you say, there's software licenses, overheads in terms of you might need bigger offices, more equipment, whether that be desks, electrical equipment, whatever it might be. There's lots of costs that kind of need to take into account.
Yeah, and that leads on to another point really well. So you've got the fact that we are a recruitment specific outsourcing provider. So to bring a member of staff in that has not just experience of the industry so that they can understand what the business does on a day-to-day basis, but also the understanding of the systems being used by the recruitment agency. So whether that be CRM software, pay and bill, whether they get involved slightly in the financial side of things as well, because there's a lot of training to be done there. If you don't bring someone in that's already in that role, and as we know as an outsourcer, it is not easy to find recruitment specific staff. And when you do find them and you bring them into a role that is something that they've done before, generally the salary will be higher than if you go for someone that has been a credit controller. And one thing that we focus on is the sort of credit control and the ledgers that they're in charge of. Chasing recruitment debt is different to chasing any other debt. It takes a certain type of person to be able to do that. I think that's something we do really well.
Yeah, I do think it is really important when looking at outsourcing your back office, you look for a recruitment specific
100%,
company.
Yeah, it's one of them things where if you don't go recruitment specific, it might be a bit cheaper, but people always say if you spend cheap, you generally pay twice.
Yeah, and really you don't want a jack of all trades, you want a master.
These people are in contact with your clients and candidates. It needs to be right, and it's your reputation that's on the line, not the outsourcing partner's reputation.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, and then I guess we move on now to the pros of in-house, back office in-house.
Yeah, so there's obviously, like I said, there's certain pros of each. One of the things that we come up against when we're speaking to clients that have an in-house solution is accessibility to the people that are in charge of the back office process. So if you've got an in-house process, you can walk down your office, you see on a day-to-day basis how that process is going and who's carrying it out, and that leads quite well onto the quality control aspect as well. It's not as easy to control the quality of the work being done if it's an outsourced solution compared to in-house, because like I said, you can go and
walk down the corridor and speak to Sally.
They're accessible. They're in your office every day. Whereas outsourcing can feel, specifically, this is a responsibility of the outsourcing partner to feel like a partner, not a third party, and be accessible. But yeah, like I said, you can control the quality of the emails and the phone calls to your candidates if you've got an in-house operation. Outsourcing, it's a little bit different. But that sort of is all encompassed by trusting the partner that you're with. Like I said, it's a responsibility of the outsourcing partner to be a partner and not a third party. And finally, sort of another point is the training time for an outsourcing partner. So we talked about the training time for an in-house solution, but there's also time to train an outsourcing provider. They'll have recruitment experience and they'll have knowledge of software that you use, but it's more educating them on how you use that software. Because everyone uses CRMs differently, everyone uses middle office systems differently. No two recruitment agencies are the same, so you've got to spend a lot of time educating outsourcing partners on your process. It's an upfront investment that you expect to pay off, but there is that time.
And that investment is obviously money and resources.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're already understaffed, then that can be quite strenuous on a business.
Yeah, absolutely. That leads us quite nicely on to my next question. So if an agency is considering to outsource, when do you think is a suitable time or a good time for them to either consider it or actually do it in your kind of experience thus far?
Yeah, so I'll probably break this question down into sort of two parts. If you're a new startup business and you're an experienced recruiter who's looking to set up by themselves, then your experience will lie in recruiting, not in the back office, payroll, credit control, things like that. Most recruiters don't have a lot of exposure to that when they're working for an agency. They know it's taken care of. They'll generally know what happens, but they don't know how and why. They don't need to know. So as a new startup agency, I say look at outsourcing straight away. Let us do the admin and the burden that comes with running an agency on a week-to-week basis. Focus on what you do best, which is obviously building revenue, relationships with clients and candidates. If you're an established business and you've got in-house staff already in place, it's about detecting the hiccups that potentially come with having an in-house solution. Don't wait until the big problem has erupted before you look at an outsourcing partner.
Because by that point, it's too late. Yeah,
You've got,
it's going to cause more.
even if you outsource at that point, there's a lot to be fixed or a lot to be corrected. And as I've said earlier on, it's the recruitment agency's reputation that's on the line. If candidates are not being paid on a weekly basis, don't wait for all of your payroll not to be on time before you look for an outsourcing partner. Do it when a couple of timesheets have been late or not processed or whatever. I think people will get the general gist of that. Don't leave it till the last minute. Which,
sometimes it happens,
you hope
doesn't it?
But it does happen.
Okay, shall we move on to our case studies now? Because I am just quite conscious of time. So we have 3 case studies, and we wanted to use clients varying sizes and in various agencies. So we've got a first case study is a startup agency that recently joined with ourselves. Then we've kind of got a mid-sized education agency that we're going to discuss, and then we're going to move on to a larger agency. So let's start with the startup, shall we? So this particular, it was just a guy, wasn't it? He'd worked for fintech agencies previously. He realised that he could do it on his own and that he was making a lot of money for the agencies that he was working for. He'd worked at various agencies for around 5 years, wasn't it? And he decided that he thought he'd go out and do it on his own. He had absolutely no idea on how the back office side of an agency worked. He only knew the recruitment side. So he reached out to us. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you helped him, what his concerns were?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I spoke to this gent for 6 months before he actually made the decision to settle by himself. And that was a process of reassuring him and actually educating him that a business like us existed. He was referred to us by someone that we already had as a client, which was great because he had no idea a solution like ours existed. We wouldn't have got that business otherwise. And what we did for this agency shows like our sort of what we can do as a group as well, really well. So the first initial steps, talking through how our process works, price and everything like that. But we actually formed this company for this individual, applied for all the relevant taxes, everything that's needed. Everything was in place. Taking care of him, he'd been charged by an accountant for that, and we did it as a investment in the business, and a reassurance to him that we were there to support him as a partner, not just a third party. And from there, we discussed with him what he wanted his business to look like, and how we could support him with that. So he'd been focusing on perms mainly, was interested in potentially having a contractor book, but the initial stage was perms. So we supported him with a CRM because the first thing that you need as a perm agency is a database. So we offered our CRM to him, which is Centric Flow. He took that on board, had a look at it, really liked the onboarding and compliance factor of it. These contractors were, well experienced, well educated individuals. They needed a smooth onboarding process, and that Centric Flow could offer that. So we onboarded him on that system, and that actually meant that because he was with Centric Flow, and we've got open API integrations to our middle office, and then from our middle office, which is Evertime, right through to Zero, there was no human intervention needed, no manual exporting and importing. It was all done through an integration. So we were able to offer him a fully integrated back office solution, where all he had to worry about was what he was good at, and he really appreciated just being able to focus on growing his business and knowing that everything else was taken up care of, from raising an invoice to credit control right through to his year-end accounts. And his experience now, he's 6 months down the line. I think when I first spoke to him, he said he'd be happy if he did 150k in his first year, given some situations that he had going on. He's actually reached 140k in turnover after 8 placements in 6 months, which is impressive work for anyone.
So we started speaking to him about a year ago. So a year on.
A year on. Brilliant. And that's a really good explanation of what we can do as a group, not just Centric Flows involved in that. Evertime, which is our middle office, which obviously we use across outsourcing, but that is a product, standalone product as well. So it's a good example.
That's great, thank you, Dan. So our next case study is a mid-sized agency. So this is an education agency based in the Northwest. When they reached out to us, they've been registered for around 4 years. They had 7 internal staff at the time, 5 of which were sales staff, and they had a contract book of about 75 to 80, and they were working with anything between 25 and 30 end clients. So what were their concerns? What were they having problems with when they reached out to us, and kind of how did we come up with a solution for that?
There's a simple answer here. It's cost and outgrowing their current solution.
So cost was like their main cause of concern at that point in time.
Yeah, and we weren't, don't get me wrong, we weren't in a race to the bottom with this client. It wasn't that we were going to quote lower for a solution that they'd already got, because it was very obvious to see they were actually being charged a lot of money because they'd outgrown the solution that they were on, because it was a percentage-based fee model.
So what was the solution that they were on?
They were on 100% recruitment funding, payroll and back office. They had a separate accountant in place. That relationship, although it wasn't wrong, it was just slightly disconnected. So someone was processing the payroll back office, and then it was being fed through to a separate accountant. There was no integration in place, so the accountant was uploading manual reports into Xero, and it was just quite cumbersome, and there was a sort of blaming culture between the accountant and the back office provider as to who did what and why things went wrong.
And they were charged as a percentage fee?
Yeah, they were by their provider, and then they were charged a monthly fee by their accountant.
Right.
So the first aspect that I looked at was this client. Obviously, they came to us because they'd seen our advertisement that we could save agencies in this position between 20 and 30% on overheads. I think when I worked it out, we could save this agency 24% on their overheads, which to them was, nearly 2 members of staff that they could bring in that would increase revenue and increase profits. So the first thing that we did, I created some projections, which was a comparison between the fee that they were paying at the moment and a comparison of what we charge them if we were to source them an invoice discounting solution, provide a payroll back office and accountancy solution all in one sort of comprehensive integrated solution, which they really liked the sound of, because they wanted to sort of negate that disruption between their accountant and the back office provider. So the reason that they actually initially reached out to us was because they saw that we provided a similar solution to the one that we're on now, and wanted to see if they could progress from that solution into a solution in-house with us, which is a strange concept at first to me, but I understood why they'd come to us, because their current provider didn't offer that, but they wanted
kind
to
of hit a bit of a brick road in terms of scalability.
Yeah, exactly that. And we discussed obviously the cost saving element, but also systems and software that they were using and how we could utilize that to make the process smoother, and also like almost a consultative approach into streamlining the back office as well. So they were really happy with that, and we obviously anyone's going to be happy that they can save money that they can potentially reinvest into the business as well.
Okay, and then our final case study. So this was a really complex client, wasn't it? When they reached out to us. So this was a larger London-based agency. They worked within the engineering sector. They've been established for around 15 plus years. They had 15 internal staff, 10 of which were sales, and they had a contract book of about 150 with 20 to 25 end clients. So do you want to delve into this one, Dan?
Yeah, so this is very different to how we would sell other solutions as such, because people will come to you, businesses of all different sizes, and the approach is very different for agencies of this size.
And also every business is different. So depending on the agency you're speaking to, we have to understand their processes and how they currently work and how we can improve those processes. So every agency, I guess, it's a different conversation that we're having every time.
Well, a business of that size that has their own in-house process, they had their own ways that they wanted to. They'd done things, no one had really challenged that, because they'd gone through quite a few periods of growth, so the time hadn't been available for them to sort of reevaluate what they were doing and how they were doing it. So the first session we had with them was sort of a really sort of consultative approach and a consultation as such, as to finding out what they were doing at the moment, what systems they were using, what their issues were, and how we could possibly begin to look at fixing that. There was no resolution formed in that initial conversation. It was a lot of takeaways for us to look at what we could do to support them, and highlighting the key areas of sort of difficulties that we could possibly iron out.
Yeah.
One of those being they had multiple single points of failure, which as a directors of the business they were very concerned about.
Yeah. And by that you mean a single person looking after, say, a department within the business, and if they were to leave, they'd leave a huge knowledge gap within the agency.
100%. It's not even particularly to leave. You know, anything can happen. Someone can be ill for a prolonged period of time. Systems can sort of fail, and there was no resolution to that or anyone to sort of support with that. As well as that, the cost of their in-house operation was quite high, and that was something that they were looking to reduce, given that they'd had unprecedented growth periods, but then struggled after them. So they hired to get through the growth, but then couldn't drop those hires because they'd returned to a normal state of business. So that was a difficulty for them. So we started with looking at the onboarding of the candidates, how that was being done at the time. So they were happy with the CRM that they were using. The system worked fine. What they weren't particularly pleased with is that they were doing their onboarding in the CRM, and then there was no sort of forward integration into the middle office that they were using at the time. So they were putting information into the CRM and then putting it again into the middle office, which meant they had no sort of single source of truth when it came to, you know, if you got to look back because you got a phone call from a candidate, they potentially had to look back in 2 or 3 systems.
And I think that is something really important to highlight. When it comes to systems, the front end system, aka the CRM, should be the first and single point of data input, and then everything should flow throughout the mid and back office.
100%.
People shouldn't be re-inputting data throughout any process. It should go in once, and then it should, via API, whatever it might be, integrate and go via.
Yeah, exactly. And so the first thing that we looked at was obviously onboarding. That was fine. The CRM was fine. Obviously, the middle office, they weren't unhappy with it, but it was quite costly, and they didn't feel like it was necessary to sort of stick with that for their business. So we proposed and implemented Evertime, which had an integration with the CRM that they were already using.
So that's our pay and bill platform.
Yeah, our pay and bill platform, which that removed 2 issues. They had an integration, so they weren't taking up too much time inputting into 2 systems, but they also then had a single source of data. So that was really useful for them as a business. So then we looked at their accounting software, which was very dated. They were using a system that they'd had in place for 10 years, which was a good software then. They hadn't changed because they hadn't had time to sort of visit that as a business. So they were happy to move away from that. So we implemented Zero. That has an integration with obviously our middle office Evertime. So we then very sort of not quickly because it took time. There was obviously consultation periods, gap analysis, but we very quickly come up with a solution that would allow them to not only have one true source of data, it saved them a lot of time, it saved them a lot of cost, and then everything was integrated as well. So there was no manual intervention, just reducing the chance of errors.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think that's our 3 case studies just about summarised now. Yeah, I think kind of just to summarise, no matter where a recruitment company is in their journey, they are inevitably going to have pain points, and how they overcome these, there can be various different ways. And I think recruitment back office, whether it's outsourced or they do it in-house, there are so many different options, and people can pick and choose services.
It's not even a size thing, Hannah. It's sort of very specific to that agency, that business. Exactly. It's not a size business thing. It's not a sector that they're operating in. It's very sort of individual to that specific business. So it's not something that you can say, right, if your turnover is this, then you should be with this solution, or if you've got this many candidates out, or if you're using this software, you should be with this solution. It's very much specific to that
particular agency. No matter what their pain point is as well.
Exactly.
There's something that we would always be able to help with, and we're, I would like to think, very consultative and flexible in our approach when we deal with agencies.
I've said to many people that I deal with, it's not a sales process, it's a consultation process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we offer so many different solutions now, and we can even sort of pick and mix them solutions to fit a business. One thing that I would say that we kind of touched on so far, if you are outsourcing, you don't have to outsource everything.
Absolutely.
You can have elements of your back office outsourced and elements in the house. That works really well for some people. I spoke to an agency recently that had no desire to outsource their credit control because they were quite comfortable with the in-house process that they had. They didn't feel like they necessarily needed a big emphasis on credit control because their clients were quite good payers, and not outsourcing that saves them some money, but they really did need a structured pay and bill process that was taken care of separate to the business, that they were comfortable with, and that's exactly what we put in place for them. So I think to touch on, you don't have to outsource everything. It can be certain elements and not others.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to conclude there because I'm just really conscious of time. We're about 25 minutes in. We haven't had any questions throughout the webinar, but if anyone does have any questions, please do reach out to either myself or Dan via LinkedIn. I'm Hannah Mollison, Dan Benson, and we'd be happy to help. If you have any queries regarding outsourcing your back office, or if you would like to have a conversation about anything that is causing you potential issues or problems within your agency, we'd be more than happy to have a conversation. This is going to be a series of webinars. We've opened this up with a full kind of back office overview, but what we are looking to do is to have future webinars where we look at all the different individual services that are involved in webinars, whether that be pay and bill, credit control, whatever it might be. So there will be more to come. And thank you so much for joining, everybody. Dan, thanks so much for going through the case studies and giving everyone a piece of your knowledge.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
And I hope everyone has a good day. Thank you so much.